questions. Mark first.
Yeah, that's quick. Mark Giles with the National Defense Public Affairs Office. Thank you, sir, for an excellent presentation. Very inspiring. I'm just wondering, certainly I can see what the experiences you've had there, you outlined quite clearly how that could easily, in many cases, does result in PTSD. I'm just wondering, and I don't want to open a whole can of worms, I'm just interested in a quick comment on it. Maybe Stefan will touch on this as well, and that is PTSD that will come from more, not over a 6-month deployment or a 10-month deployment, but over a longer period of time. I'm thinking police and emergency management personnel. Is there any work being done on that?
It's interesting. There's a lot of police, like RCMP, police and fire and ambulance, that have connected with me through my website. They've come to our talks. The military is about 10 years ahead of many of those organizations as far as what they can do to handle their problem. And then you have issues like in the RCMP where you have leadership that don't even yet get it. So they've got a real problem. So what we're starting to see in the Veterans Transition Program that I work with out of UBC is they're starting to come and access our program because they know they can't get it from within. And I think the more we have these kinds of discussions, the more people that read books like mine and listen to Stefan and people like us that have been injured and are now coming, the new, what I like to call warriors rising, is that they will start to listen to us. It will slowly destigmatize the issue, and then slowly that will bleed out into the other first responder worlds, which are really, they are struggling horribly right now. They can't find their ass with both hands. It's bad.
Yeah, no, you're right, sir. I mean,
sorry, was that
inappropriate? That's okay. It's for the record, it's being recorded.
You're offended? Okay.
In particular, I mean, some of these police officers that are in the identification sections are going to quite horrific scenes quite regularly.
Yeah.
Two more. We'll start with John Thompson and Arthur, please.
Back in the mid-'80s, there was some recognition coming in that stress casualties in major conventional conflicts, in the Second World War, that if someone hasn't been killed or wounded after 80 to 100 days of more or less continuous frontline combat, they were pretty well had to be taken out of the line, and there were not much use as far as the military was concerned. But I think one of the things was that, and again, there was psychology was in its infancy at that time, but people who had sociopathic tendencies tended to disassociate themselves from combat, so that they were the ones who could actually stay in, 200 or 300 days. Is that the same thing, though? I think now with PTSD, are there again some soldiers who are almost immune to it because they might have some other condition?
I don't know. I'm not qualified to answer that, and I certainly have not read the research on that one. We try to keep sociopaths out of the military. They're actually weeded out through recruiting.
The function of the military environment has to be mild sociopathy. Sort of, you could go into something like what you saw in Rwanda, and at some level feel it wasn't real.
Yeah.
But you were still able to function with it.
Yeah, I mean, being a clinical guy and a trauma nurse, I mean, you get to this point where you get off on it because it's what you do. You're trained to deal with it. And you start to look at it as a box, right? And everything that I need to know is in that box, and I can take what's in that box and then I can apply it to this casualty that's just come in. And you look at it as more of a challenge to okay, here's a person that's close to death, or maybe they're even dead, and they're doing one of these on the guy as he comes in and breathing for him, so he's dead. Now you're going to try and make him not dead. And the feeling that you get when you achieve that is like, the docs in the room will recognize that, is unbelievable feeling. And it's a high five moment, and bang, bang, everybody's around, and you just lock right onto that. That's mission mode. That's what I'm talking about. When you walk away from it, I wouldn't often feel the emotional impact of it for a day or so. It would just, my brain would have to process it. Because sometimes we were unsuccessful, right? Or sometimes you're dealing with a kid that big. In my book, I tell a story about a young baby that I had to resuscitate. And as a result of my actions, I killed the child. My clinical action killed the child. She was probably going to die that day anyway, but what I did killed her in a matter of a minute. It took 18 years for me to even tell my therapist. I had told no one. I felt such shame about it. And professionally, it just crushed me. All that stuff, all that high five stuff we were doing and that we were winning was crumbled by that one simple act. And it just showed me, you know, the human side. That's the human. There's this tragedy, there's this suffering, there's this trauma that I, for the first time, was impacted by a simple clinical error that I made under a tent in Rwanda that killed a young child. It's interesting, huh? I don't know if that answers your question. I ranted there.
Two comments. I'm also a nurse by original education. I've done a great deal of work in street health and also in emerge and ICUs through a long career. A nurse is injured every day on the job. A lot of nurses have PTSD.
Yeah.
Doesn't get dealt with.
Yeah.
One of my concerns is that you're having to retire from the military. And I liked what you have there about who's training to come home. But more importantly, I think what we need to do in our educational processes is to have the opportunity to know that these stresses are going to come to you and to have ways to deal with them so you don't become so debilitated that you can't carry on in your profession. And I think that's a real dilemma we have. Many people end up locked in or blocked off. And so that we don't lose someone after 20 or 30 years that could continue if we had the tools. And I think that's something that I wonder if it's being addressed as part of any kind of training and preparation. Because the first day I went to training, right into a ward with a patient, and then I had to come back and answer, multiple questions, the right or the wrong. And I think it's really important. I mean, that was wonderful and amazing in a way, but I think it's really important to build that into the educational process that allows people to be able to process. And is that being discussed? Because the military, hugely expensive to train a soldier, never mind an NCO, never mind an officer.
Yeah, I'm being released medically because of my PTSD, because, it's interesting, I stand before you today the healthiest I have been in 20 years. Way more connected with myself and who I am. I could step into any light colonel job in the CF and do it today. Well, health services. Okay? Should I do that? No. It's not where I'm going right now. I have changed so profoundly through my healing process that I need to go off in this direction now. And I am in breach of universality of service. And for those of you that don't know, it's the policy that exists that says if you're not deployable, you're not employable. So I am not deployable, even though I'm the healthiest I've been in 20 years. No doc or social worker in their right mind would deploy me again with my history. And I'm okay with that. So I'm leaving the military 2 years early than I would have had I not come forward or not been injured. And I'm okay with that. Just because of the path I'm on and the learning that I've had through my journey. That's my story. So what about the poor kid that's 10 years in, or not quite 10 years in, hasn't had a career yet, can't draw a pension, and the fear is that if I come forward, I'm going to lose my job. So I'm going to stay in this. But what they don't realize is if they don't come forward and they end up in some sort of acute stage, they're going to be removed and lose their career anyway. So the sad part is a lot of people feel abandoned, right? They say, yeah, I've given 20 years and I'm being tossed out and, no, you're not. You're not being tossed out. You're being released for a very good reason. A clinical decision was made that you are no longer deployable. Whether you like the policy or not, let's not argue that. We can argue that all day long, but that's the policy. If you don't fit that criteria to be deployable, then you must go. It's in your best interest to go. And I think if people can focus on their health first and career later, because you know what? There's always another job. There just is. People have been leaving the military and getting other jobs for decades. So I think it's just a matter of keeping the conversation going earlier rather than later, teaching people how to deal with their stresses early rather than later. Don't let it get to like what I did, 10 years down the road. Talk about it as you go. And the CF now has a Road to Mental Readiness program that they're starting right at the basic level. And that's starting to teach kids as they come in and go through their basic training that what you're about to do, this 13-week course, is a stressful thing. We're going to teach you some techniques to understand how to get through it better. So that's really good. They're inculcating it into the culture as to how you should be thinking of addressing these stress issues right from the start. And I think down the road, they'll reap some benefit from that. It's too late for those of us in uniform in here. I mean, they're already screwed, right? But I mean, if the new people that are coming in, they're going to get this new education. And I think maybe we'll see some people coming forward, like my son, who came forward. He had no fear, no shame. I wouldn't have done that at his age.
And that's what I'm asking, so that it's starting to be built into the system.
Yeah.
Which is really important.
Yeah, I agree.